And it, in general, opens up your energy field to these more spiritual dimensions. But at the same time, this is my experience, at the same time, it definitely drops your frequency in the astral realm and takes you deeper and deeper to lower frequencies. It's a plutonic herb.
So hi Soul Family, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host Haji, and this is amazing science, magic, and metaphysical stories. Our guest today is Stefan Burns. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Hi, hello, thanks for inviting me on. This is great.
Okay. The first question I have
Okay.
is childhood spirituality or religious beliefs. Like what did you believe and has it changed since then?
Yeah, I'd say my spiritual development's changed quite a lot since I was young to now. I mean, it really took off in the 30s, like when I turned about 30 or so, a little bit before that. But that was a really big kind of transformational moment. And there's a whole bunch of things that indicate that, my astrology and world events. And, I just finished this like long gut health journey. And so I think because my health was better, all of a sudden that flourished as a result. But I had a lot of interesting experiences as a kid. We went to church a little bit, but not much. I mean, I went to church the most when I ended up visiting my family back in Pennsylvania. My grandpa went to church every Sunday, and I didn't like going to church. I was not a fan of it. So I never saw myself. I was like, great, the moment I'm old enough that I don't have to be obliged to go with grandpa. I love grandpa, but or Busha, grandma, I just don't want to go. But it's interesting because I've come back to that, but I was never really in it to begin with. And so it's like I was kind of every now and then we go to church or something, but it was really almost like my own discovery of it. I don't go to church often now, but when I was traveling, I went to church quite a bit. You're in Europe and there's these big cathedrals, and they have amazing masses every Sunday and choirs and everything. It's like really the place to be. I've had some profound experiences in those settings too. I've also had profound experiences with creator or, just the greater field of source out in nature with no priest or anything, just me and my connection to it. So that's all this kind of increase in general since I've been about 30. But when I was a kid, I had a lot of interesting dream experiences. And it just gives you a sense that there's something more out there, and kind of gives you you see the forest, but there's a little trail that you see, some little bush trail. It's there. Most people don't walk down it, but I knew it was there at least. I wasn't so oblivious that I was walking along the edge of the forest and I didn't even see it. I at least knew there was some sort of little trail there leading deeper in. And now I'd say I'm walking on that, and actually widened up quite a bit. And now it's a very nice path to walk along. But yeah, plenty of interesting childhood experiences.
Nice. And they say many of us, we're more spiritual as children anyway. We're more connected to source, and then we gradually get disconnected.
I believe
Okay,
that.
so next question is, why science, and how early did you know it was for you?
I was just always good at science. I think it's just some of the gifts that I was given or incarnated with is just having a good kind of logical, analytical mind. And also, I mean, science, it's interesting. And that type of field requires you to very much study and work hard, but there's also just an aspect of just bringing it in. Does it just resonate with you? And so in middle school, high school, I didn't really study all that much. I really just absorbed everything and did well enough with that to get good grades. And then in college, I had to learn to study, and that's a whole new modifier on it, because to study well, you want to apply that scientific method to it, right? What's the best way to study? What's a good environment for me so I don't get distracted? What do I need to study? Do I read the whole book, or do I pare down to the most specific chapter that's relevant to this exam or something? And so that kind of further amplified it. I'm glad I went through that process. I failed calculus 2C 2 times, and the third time you fail, it's a big deal. And so the third time though, I really buckled up and then I got a good grade. But that taught me the importance of that aspect of kind of like the scientific process, you could say. And now I'm happy for that because now I do read a lot of papers and I'm self-motivated and, you know, I still absorb things, but I also put myself out there and, you know, have some level of dedication for finding things too, because not everything is just going to float by you. Sometimes it's good to strike out in new directions with purposeful intention. But it's always just been resonant with me. I mean, very much, it was kind of like maybe as a kid, spirituality is there, but I also had a very creative in mind that liked to tinker around and stuff. And then like the science kind of came up to a bigger degree in like the teenage years, and now they're kind of at equilibrium, I would say.
Nice, nice. And I mean, I know from your channel and from previous interviews that you were going in the corporate, or you were in the corporate world with geology, and then you decided to leave it. So just speak a little bit about that. And then, like, I guess my weird question is, like, in another timeline, the you that stayed in corporate, is he happy? Is he chilling? Like, what is he doing right now?
Yeah, interesting. Well, after school, I got a BS in geology. Then I quickly was able to find a job in geophysics. And I think in general, life has always kind of like guided me in the right direction. So for example, back in college, there was an email listserv for all the geology students. And there was an email that was put out looking for some help gardening for one of the old professors. And I saw that within like the first 2 minutes of it being pushed out to the listserv of hundreds of people. And I love gardening. So I replied back instantly and I got one of the 2 slots. Well, it turns out this old professor is Eldridge Moores, who is one of the founders of plate tectonic theory. So this guy is like, I mean, he was like 85 or almost 90 at that point. He's very old, but he was really nice. His wife is nice. And I'd go there, I'd work for 4 hours. They'd give me all these treats. I would get like $60. It was fantastic. It was amazing as a college kid. But that was very much one of these like divine timing, synchronistic moments. I saw it right when it was there and I got the job. It was the same with my first job outside of college. It was a similar situation with the listserv. I saw it, I called the guy up, and then I quickly, like I just started job hunting, I got it. Whereas a lot of people in the geology field, like when they get out of college, they often exit geology because there's not the opportunities or not the jobs that they want. So I got lucky, I was pushed into it, and in general, I had a good time with it, though there were periods where I was like, I don't like this, but then I kind of dug a little deeper and reevaluated my relationship with the job and gave myself more autonomy, which ended up being better for myself and for the company. And then I was doing that with the second job that I had, which was also in geology, but more office-based. I was doing sales, marketing, demos, field work, a whole bunch of things. And it just started to not feel as resonant anymore. But during that time, I'd actually made a lot of videos for the company YouTube channel. That was kind of all my preparatory work for YouTube, was with those videos, which are still there. And they're great. People still watch them and say, this is great review or data analysis, whatever. So that's awesome. It's dead now. The channel's dead now. But when I was there, it was doing well. And so that gave me the confidence to be like, you know what, I think I can do this on my own. I don't have to be limited by certain things. And so it was all leading in that direction. But then I finally took that kind of leap of faith to jump into YouTube. And I had enough savings that I was like, well, let's travel the world. I can do that for cheaper than I can living in the US. Like, you can travel around for cheaper than living in the US if you have savings. And I'll make videos and content and write blogs and stuff during that and hope that it all works out. And then eventually the channel did well and it did work out. So now I'm self-sufficient with the online stuff. But that all led that direction.
Yeah, and it sounds like it really was like placed like strategically. There was no coincidence in any of it. Like, you were really just being led in that direction.
And to answer your question about the future, Stefan, if you had stayed there, I think I would be happy, but I don't think my spiritual development would be where it is. because I've made that a big focus. So I'm just spending more time in that thought field, right? And in that experience. I'm not meditating 6 hours a day or anything, but in general, I have more flexibility and freedom with my time. In office environments, there's like politics and, it's a lot of like toxic stuff often. And,
Yes.
that influences who you are. And so I don't have that. But I continuously was pretty good at reevaluating and refocusing and building autonomy. I always had a lot of autonomy within my positions just by how I carried myself. But I don't like having people over me. And so that was always kind of a constant headbutt. And so eventually I think I would have launched my own business or something. And now I basically have. And so I think no matter what, the destination would have gone to where it is.
So I'm talking to the fast forward Stefan. Like you kind of figured it all out really quick and then got straight to the point. Yes, I like that. Okay. All right. So now I'm gonna jump straight into like some spiritual stuff. I'm going to list 8 things and I want to know what your feelings are about them. Okay.
Okay.
So reincarnation.
I believe it.
Okay.
There's so much evidence for it. I mean, we see these records of kids that are born and they like know their past life, and they like, it's not only that they just share this information, it's like then they go to that person and like they meet that woman and has all the details, and this kid's like 4, and it's like something to this.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Well, parallel lives. So parallel lives meaning like if like what we just spoke about just now, like that one little decision change would have made a whole nother Stefan. So do you believe that there are multiple Earths, multiple us?
Probably. I mean, I don't have a firm opinion on it, but probably. I do have one kind of idea which is interesting, which is similar in that like you can't make any mistake in life. Like if all of a sudden like someone was to come up and try to stab me, like in this life maybe I get stabbed, but in the other one the guy just misses. And so you always just hop over to the next one. Because I've had so many experiences where it's like that should have been like a car crash or something crazy, but it wasn't. It was like I just happened to be at the exact perfect timings for it to not occur. And so I'm like, maybe it was just me hopping over to that next timeline. In that other timeline, it was tragic and I did die or something like that.
Oh, like there are indie ears. Like if you, I mean, you probably don't follow that. That's my life. So I follow.
No, I track it a little bit.
And there are people who have literally had exactly that situation where they say that they were in some kind of, life and death situation, and they know that there's no way they could have made it. Then they move past that moment somehow magically, but everything changes. Like they start seeing little nuances that are not the same as they were before. So it really is like they went into another timeline. Wow, it's wild. Okay, time travel.
Ooh, I feel like there'd be evidence of that. But I don't know. I don't know how that would work. I mean, you could have time travel so if we do reincarnate, right? Our soul goes to a dimension beyond space and time. Well, why not reincarnate at times into the past? Like, let's say here's Stefan and my soul, my spirit now in 21st century, but then the next one is actually 15th century, and then it goes forward. It doesn't have to be linear. I think people always think of reincarnation as linear going forward, but it doesn't necessarily have to be if we're already doing this like jump out of our normal 4D space-time reality.
I am so glad you're saying this because I totally believe this. And like I'm actually waiting to make a video about this, but I'm like, people don't understand that you can go back and you can go back forward everywhere. And I've read some NDEs where they had just that experience where they said, okay, where do you want to go? And they're kind of like looking like time is just open. It doesn't exist there. So you could, that's also why we really, like, if karma is real, we better really get ourselves together, because you can go back in some, like, back is not good. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, unless you're a king or a queen, and even then, like, backwards on this planet is really not that great.
Typically, it gets worse, yeah.
Right? But then think about this. If we, as evolved souls, were going backwards, and if we retain any kind of, and I think we do retain some of our basic growth. We don't remember things, but I feel like the past would actually get better, and then the future will get even better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a whole interesting spiral. Like, that's why I think it's so important to do the work now, because it influences everything in all directions. And I think it really does start with you. Like there's this collective aspect, which is really important, of course. I mean, I wouldn't be making these videos and educating others if I didn't believe in like my ability to help influence the collective. But I also believe that what you do in your own life will mirror everything. And so if you're littering and stuff, for example, then your place is going to be a complete, there'll be trash everywhere, like your city, for example. But if you make sure that you're good and clean, then you won't notice that in your experience, right? Like maybe there is trash on that street over there, but you didn't walk that street. You walked the one that just happened to be clean. And so that's kind of what I believe, is that what you're actually doing, like you say, we don't want, excess climate change or a super hot earth, but then you do these things that promote that. Well, then I think you're going to see that. But like when I was back, when I spent some time back home, I'm a big gardener. I love to garden when I can. I don't have a garden here. But I think that when you do these actions and create that good karma, the earth responds. And so I put down a whole bunch of wood chips and stuff in the garden, whereas before the soil was kind of dead and dry. And I built out this creek and like protective embankment and fortified it so there wouldn't be as much erosion. Well, Napa was in a drought for years, and then the winter after I did all that, we got tons and tons and tons of rain. And the water went right to that embankment that I built, but it did not go over, it did not erode it down. And all those wood chips, which I put down in the garden, now created basically, like fertilizer tea. And the next spring, there were so many wildflowers and all this stuff. It was so vibrant and like the garden was so rich with life because the soil actually had nutrients now. And it was blocked by those wood chips. So you didn't have the radiation just killing off all the microorganisms in the soil. And so I gave Earth the signal saying, hey, as your helper, I can do this. And she said, okay, you did it. Here's the rain. And so we were in a drought. We're not in a drought anymore, right? It requires you to do the work. That's what I believe.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay.
But there's a lot of days where I was shoveling, I was sweating like crazy. It's hard work, but I enjoyed it. That's the thing. People forget about that.
All right. Star seeds, earth volunteers, light workers, that whole, all the helpers. You believe?
Just my thoughts? Yeah. I mean, well, if we're already having our soul go beyond space and time, then star seeds for sure are possible. Because, and it's not even a question of like, okay, I'm Andromeda, I have to spend, now 200,000 light years to get to Earth. It's just instantaneous. You say, boom, I'm there. If this is what reality is. The question I see it more as is like, how do you know you're a starseed? And so there's these characteristics, and I think there can be like an inner knowing. But I also do think that just in general, as we see in life, things become trends and popular. Now everyone wants to be one, right? And so we just have to be aware of that. It's like there has to be this inner resonance and knowing, and then the definition will expand, and all of a sudden it's if you have this, and that, it's like every single thing possible. Oh yeah, you're a starseed. And it's like, well, maybe not so. And who's the person who figured out that 99% of people aren't starseeds and 1% are? Why isn't it more? Why is it like, what's the percentage? Like, how do people figure that out? That's the big question I have.
But I just wanted to mention that there have been people who have had NDEs, OBEs, all that kind of stuff, who literally say that they remember being told, Earth needs help, we need you to go, So several, quite a good amount that I really do feel like these are people on this planet who have, a mission. And I think the biggest thing, just before we move past this, is the mission. It's not about, oh, I like to, I'm a loner, or I like to do this, or, all that kind of like really kind of egocentric type stuff. It's that you want to help this planet and the beings on this planet. That's probably the biggest thing that will let you know that you are a starseed,
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Because there's a lot of people who talk, but then sometimes I'm like, where's the action? I'm not going to make any names, but there's someone on YouTube who talks about starseeds. And it's like, I've now aligned with my spirit, and I can help people to discover their inner essence. but I only want to work like 4 hours a week. And it's like, hey, you can work as much or as little as you want, but if you really had a mission, I feel like you'd be putting in more effort than one video every 3 weeks. Like that's really pretty easy to do. It's like a nothing. And so like, are you actually like, what are you really doing every single day to help people? Right?
Yes. True. Akashic Records.
An interesting idea. It's one of these like labels that exist, right? Like we call them the Kosic Records. Like what are they? Where do they exist? Is it multiple, like, are there multiple levels to that library? Like the first level could be the Schumann resonances. This information perhaps in the global energy field. That makes a lot of sense to me. But is that the only explanation? Like maybe it's just being able to see into the quantum field and pull information out of it. And how do you get good at that? And how do you know that what you're actually getting information from some outside source? It's not just some thought that's generated internally. That's my big question with channelers. How many, there's some percentage, we don't know the percentage, I don't, but there's some percentage of channelers who are doing the real thing, and there's some percentage who just have things bubbling up from inside, who are then saying that's, Grand Metatron the Fourth. And we don't know the percentage. I don't know the percentage. And so that makes the whole thing confusing because there's also then the popularity aspect. Oh, I can start a YouTube channel. I can be a channeler. I can be popular. I can say crazy things to get attention. Oh, I was channeled to Armageddon. It's coming, right? And then that year rolls around and nothing happens. It's like, well, I guess you didn't channel it, or maybe the time. There's so many possibilities here.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with the spiritual field.
And that's the excitement of like, if we go into the new earth, like I don't want to go too off of, schedule here, but just if we go to the new earth, the idea that everything is clear, like we all can see what's reality and what's real, that's going to be big because the biggest problem with humanity is that we are always like BSing, like we're all lying to ourselves, to others. Like it's just a lot of nonsense. And it does, and everything kind of in this becoming commercial, like because we have to worry about survival and money and stuff like that, is always that fight and struggle between, okay, should I be authentic or should I pay my bills? And
it's a false fight too, because I found with my YouTube channel is that by being the more authentic I am, the easier it is to pay the bills. It's not because I'm like necessarily asking for it, but when I've had some live streams, for example, where I was just really upfront and honest and shared how I thought, and there wasn't even really any particular agenda, I just kind of felt like it, or I just wanted to talk about that issue or whatever, then, there was one where I got this flood of super thanks, and I wasn't asking people, say, hey, please donate. Like some people in their videos are like, the whole video is just talking about donate to me, please, right? But there's flood of super thanks. It's like, wow, like this is going to help because I was kind of struggling to still make things meet their ends, and so it's a false dichotomy. It's one of these deceptions and illusions that we had to get out of if we want New Earth. That's what I believe.
Yes. The last two, life on other planets.
Oh, definitely exists. We just haven't seen it. We've barely explored space. So, we're just at a baby stage right now. We don't even know what we're doing. So until we're actually out there a lot, then we won't find it, I don't think.
Yeah. And I believe they were in my room. Like I have a whole video about it where I was like, there were tall white grays and I removed them from my room.
I see.
And I'm not even like into alien stuff like that. There's no reason for me to be creating this or even dreaming it. Like it was legitimately something happened that night. And so I have a whole new faith and belief in it, which I already had anyway. But
yeah, I've had a whole bunch of alien dreams. And I never asked for them, but sometimes I get them. And there's a weird energy there. There's something.
Yeah. And the more I read NDEs, the more concerned I become that they are the ones that are kind of manipulating everything. Like they might be behind the curtain, but we'll just leave that right there.
Yeah.
All right. And then the last one is the purpose of Earth. Like, do you see Earth as a prison planet, as a school, or as an experiment or something else?
I think it can be all those things. Sometimes I see the prison planet very clearly. Other times I see the school. But so like you can have your imagination, for example, and you can imagine some world that's more wondrous than Earth, right? Something like Avatar. The jungles are so colorful, and you're swimming and you can connect to these creatures. Sounds awesome, right? But I think with Earth, there's like an understated beauty and simplicity, and it works best when there is a real feeling of humility backing it up. Like, I can also imagine just some rolling hills with a farm on top of one of them, and there's a big oak tree, and just sitting under that oak tree and watching the sunset go down. And there's not some crazy forced jaguar there that I can connect to and ride on or something, but there's maybe some bees buzzing, and it's just peaceful and quiet. And it's like Earth works best when it's like, I know I'm beautiful. I also know that I'm just what I am. And this is just a nice little backwater place to be, right? It's just a nice place to ride out the energy waves of the universe. And I think it's our perception and our experiences that turn it into things like Prison Planet or school, where you have to go through this tremendous evolution. Like, maybe we can also just kind of enjoy just being here. And we can take our time with our evolution. But, everyone's at different places, but I see all of them at the same time. I think it has all the expressions.
Nice. I like that answer. Like, what is your most spiritual or paranormal experience to date?
Well, probably, not spiritual, but like paranormal, I guess you could say, was when I was in Istanbul, and this is back in 2019. So I guess I've been into this for more since 30, because I'm just about to turn 33. Yeah, so more like 27, 26. But anyways, I was in Istanbul, and I woke up early to go catch the sunrise. And so I went to one of the cemeteries there, because I like walking through cemeteries. And I went there, and I was watching sunrise come up. It was really beautiful. And I'd also just been recently really experimenting with earthing and trees. Because they have these deep root systems. So you can get much stronger connection to the telluric currents of the earth by connecting with the tree. And and there seemed to be greater energy with me at that time to be able to do that. And so part of this is also psychological, I think, because I was in a certain state. But I put my hand on this tree in the cemetery, and it was this nice looking tree. And I grounded to it, and I was like trying to get this flow of energy, but then it like didn't feel good. And all of a sudden I had like this whole murder of crows swarming above me, like going crazy, like nearly starting to like dive bomb me. And so what I kind of worked through, again, it's a kind of complicated story, but in general, what I kind of worked through is that I think because that tree was in a cemetery, I think there was an old spirit that came up and kind of attached itself to my field. Because then I started having dreams that like I saw it very clearly in my dreams, and I would get these crazy chills. And there were some points in time where I had like these like big booming thoughts in my head that clearly weren't mine, and I didn't know what they were at the time. And so it was like this like entity attachment experience. And so I learned how to like eventually dislodge the thing, and in general how to deal with entities, which I've experienced a lot of, because they like to hang out when you're sleeping. Basically, if they're going to go for you, like if you don't really have any entities, they will kind of go for you when you're sleeping, because in that astral realm you're less conscious typically, and they have in the astral realm anyone can influence the makeup of reality. It's just based on how conscious your thought is and what you were really imagining. And so they are also able to then warp and manipulate what you're experiencing into, let's say, a nightmare, right? And then feed off of that. But if you are very conscious with your dreaming, then you can go ahead and turn that off, and you can shut that down. And so that helped me develop that whole thing. But I guess it was like a little bit black magic or something doing this earthing stuff in the cemetery. And now I look back like, man, that was dumb. But the crows, though, immediately, I have the video on my phone because it was so paranormal. And the moment I left the cemetery, they stopped following me. It was like right when I left the actual boundary is when they stopped following me. And then that I left like the next day. I missed my flight. All of a sudden, I had a string of bad luck.
No.
And so it was definitely this interesting, weird thing. And then I finally really got rid of it, I feel like, when I did a little microdose of mushrooms and I was laying down and I wasn't feeling anything. I didn't feel anything at all. But I still laid down to take like a nap at that point. And then I felt this intense vibration and it like wasn't like it wasn't good or bad. It was just like foreign. It wasn't me, this vibration. And I was like, this is that entity. And I said, now's your time. Like, I release you.
Yes.
But I think I also believe in like the power of the mind. So then how much of this was perhaps just a seed that was given during that experience was then I watered and let blossom. Like, I think with more consciousness, if I could go back in time, I would, and that I still did that experience. I think after I left that cemetery, I'd be like, yep, that's done now. And it would be done. But because I let it grow, it wanted itself to grow and expand into a bigger thing than it actually was. Yeah. My experience with these entities is that they were actually very weak and decrepit and frail. And it's like in Harry Potter, when you see Voldemort, he's like this shriveled up little thing in like the last movie. That's basically what they are, but they put out this big guys, and they feed and they want to just subtly twist things so your thoughts create the illusion, and so it requires very acute mental awareness to not feed that.
Yes. I'm so glad you shared this story. Like, I mean, it first of all, when you said you liked walking through cemeteries, I was like, oh my God. Like, please don't do that. And then as the story progressed, I was like, yep, this sounds about right.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you got through that. But it's important to share that story so that people understand that to some extent, yes, it is, whether you believe it or not, and you can flower or something, but spirituality is real. Like, it's more real than this physical experience that we're having here. So it's like, I just feel like I wish that more people were teaching these things. Like, there were actually things that kids in grade school were playing with, like maybe Ouija boards and doing all kinds of weird stuff, that they could, opening up all types of portals everywhere. I just wish it was something that we could teach. We could teach children and teach young adults, etc., so that they don't get into these situations, because some of these turn into people going into being in like mental institutions or jumping off a bridge, or, because I've heard all types of crazy stories where these entities, if somebody's weak enough, they don't have that mental strength that you have just naturally, they're done for, So it's just important that we start to open up those doors to learning about this stuff, I think. Yeah,
and it's really education that's so important because, for example, with cannabis, right? I mean, I used to have a lot of cannabis. I didn't have any until 25, and I experimented with it more and more. And it, in general, opens up your energy field to these more spiritual dimensions. But at the same time, this is my experience. At the same time, it definitely drops your frequency in the astral realm and takes you deeper and deeper to lower frequencies. It's a plutonic herb. Cannabis it's grown from the earth and it's very plutonic, so it connects you with those frequencies, which can be deeply empowering, but also can, it's like the underworld basically. And so when I was smoking a lot, I had a lot of interesting experiences where I would get, and just in life in general, where I would get like a one-day trial run of this so I could understand what that meant. So there was one time that I smoked and I was building a raised bed for my garden, and all of a sudden I had these shakes like this. And my uncle had Parkinson's, not family blood, but still, like, I saw what that did to him over the years. And so it was literally like I had Parkinson's for like 3 hours. I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. Whoa. And people that know cannabis know that it can help with Parkinson's because of dopamine. So I got like a little flavor, a little experience of what it's like to have a dopamine dysregulation. And so I've had that with like the Parkinson's before, or just in general, like this involuntary shaking. I've had that with a whole bunch of things. One of them was with schizophrenia. And so this is when I was probably smoking too much. Even then, it's just like once a day. But for me, because I have this very active nervous system, it's too much. I started to kind of be able to hear like those voices a little bit. And I was like, that's not normal. That's got to end. And so it was just enough of an experience. But these things can lead in that direction. And then, yeah, a lot of people don't know when to pull back or what it is, or, it's important to just be aware of this stuff.
Yes.
Because it just opens up the floodgates.
I'm so glad you're mentioning that, because it's clearly something a lot of people use. And I mean, I understand that being an herbalist and being someone who respects herbs, I understand that it has its purposes. There's some people who said it helped them not get COVID, the C word when it happened. But I ended a whole relationship over cannabis because I couldn't, it's something about it, just smelling it. I've never actually consumed it, but just the smell of it being near it, it brings my vibration down so low. It's so depressing to me. I cannot handle it at all. So I'm just glad that more people are kind of realizing it. And I have an NDE on my channel where she expresses that when she had her experience with Jesus, that he was literally showing her that when she was smoking marijuana, that there were demons around her. Like it opened up those portals to lower astral places.
Yeah. I mean, it's called devil's lettuce. So there's some truth in everything, right? It can be very healing. Sometimes you need to go to like the underworld and do those things, but
shadow work. Yeah,
not all the time. And in general, there's kind of, and it's also how it's grown, like how is it grown? That's really impactful. Now most of it's like lab grown. It's not a good place to be. I had some for 4th of July, first time in a long time, and I hadn't had any for a while before that. It was just like a recreational thing. And it was mixed too, so there's only a small percentage of this like little joint that was rolled with some friends, but all of a sudden I felt so stupid. I could barely talk. I was like, yeah, we're not doing this for a while.
All right. So this actually, it moves into another question, because like I have a couple of questions that are about just intellect. So the right and the left brain. And it's a question that I have for a lot. Like most of my friends are like either PhDs, or I generally communicate with people who are pretty smart, So I've always wondered, like, how do you balance the left brain and the right brain? And I feel like you are like the epitome of this, like you being one of the few people who are a scientist and are open to the metaphysical and what we can't see. So I guess my first question on this subject is, do you feel like you are balanced? Like you finally gotten to a point where you are balanced between the two, or do you still teeter between both worlds?
I feel like I'm pretty balanced between the two. I think the key is to just have practices that utilize both, and so they both get fed. And if there's an imbalance, then it's kind of difficult to get back into balance in some aspect, because the one that is stronger will constantly reaffirm to you to do that thing that feeds it and makes it stronger. So it's kind of like, you can think of it like the microbiome, right? If you're constantly eating sugar, then the pathogens would be like, yeah, eat more sugar. And so you end up eating more sugar, and then everything gets out of balance. But there's also some people who are raw vegan, for example, who are quite out of balance in terms of their gut health, because sometimes you do just need some easier foods to eat, right? You need something that's cooked and just isn't just pure gorilla food. So there's both sides of it. And I think generally people seem to have kind of an ability greater one than the other, and if there is something to be said for leaning into strengths. But it is good to just at least be mindful and schedule out some blocks for the opposite of what you may not be your natural gift. And so if you're more of like an intuitive empath and you live in those realms more often, I think that's right brain. Is that correct? Or is that left brain?
Yeah, no, it's right. It's right brain. Yeah.
Yeah, right brain. Let's say you're in that more creative space all the time. Like maybe it'd be good for you to read autobiographies like an hour a day or something, right? Just like hard, like here's the facts, here's the details, that type of stuff. Just get like a more linear thought process developed, because that can be tremendously useful. Some of the greatest inventions and things of that nature were created from like right brain, like dream activity and stuff of that nature. But also some of them were created from just like building something, failing, and building it again, and iteration. So you need both. And when you have both, that's where the real secret is, in my opinion, because then you have that creative spark that comes in from right brain, and then left brain is like, okay, let's make this usable. And so that's why I like the YouTube videos so much, because I do all this research, but then I have to utilize the more creative, intuitive to like blend all the information, synthesize it together, and then also feel out like when is the best time to release this? Like what's the pulse? Like what is the pulse right now on people? What do they want to hear? Like what's their interest? What do they need? How can I kind of give them what they need, but also kind of satisfy what they want? It's this whole kind of dynamic. And so I've engaged with that a lot through producing these educational YouTube videos. There's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah. I mean, 'cause I asked the question because like a lot of times, especially when people become extra quote unquote spiritual, it's kind of like the soul versus the body is really kind of what the struggle is. And then the body tends to be that monkey mind, the physical mind, that intellect, the left brain. And the soul being, and I'm saying this from experience with lots of NDEers who say that, and people who are not smart at all, like just average person, say that as soon as they reach a certain threshold or past a certain threshold, the soul knows everything. Like because we are one with the creator, we just know every single possible thing. Like the level of intellect is it surpasses what the human body or brain can do. That is almost like phenomenal. And then then you have like you have inventors like Tesla, who I just adore. So Tesla, I think Einstein to some extent, and then you have the what's the other guy, the Indian mathematician. Okay, yes, Srinivasa Ramanujan.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard of him.
Oh my God, read his story. Read his story. Read his story. So,
Okay.
I consider those the ones who I feel like, and even they say a lot of their information was people even to this day can't understand. Like they're just learning and understanding what they were saying before. It's only just now starting to like make sense. So these are like, they consider them geniuses, but they said a lot of their information came while they were sleeping or came from other worldly beings. Like it didn't come from their actual brains. And so I always just wonder, like, just the balance, like, how do you, how do you balance the human brain with the soul mind? I guess it's probably, and I'm also curious, like, do you feel like you've ever been in that flow where you feel like you're getting information from something bigger than yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Though maybe not in so poignant a way as like this Indian mathematician or some of these great people who've had these like remarkable insights that led to like transformative inventions. But I mean, like my YouTube channel, for example, started with a video on the Schumann resonances that did well. And that was really just kind of me following my intuition. I learned about them through my normal job and career. And then there was just like an intuition to follow and develop it. And spirit kept poking me in that direction. And I had, so many different, like, for example, dreams and experiences where I would get information coming in that would click and resonate. And then I would go on that path. Whereas before, I just didn't have that input at all. And so, yeah, you don't want to be too much in the left brain because then you'll miss out on all that opportunity. But if you're too far in the right brain, then literally your reality starts to collapse and you go crazy. So like there's a balance that needs to exist. And you can't discriminate anymore between your fantasy and the actual information, the collective reality field. And yeah, I mean, we've been given human bodies for a reason. If we were meant to be little floating spirits, we'd be little floating spirits. But no, at this point in time, I have a human body for a reason. So
Good point.
At some point I may be a little floating orb. But right now, I got 2 arms, 2 legs,
We got a job to do, right? We got to focus. Use the equipment.
Yeah.
All right. So now I want to get into like solar stuff now. I'm going to jump in there. So, and I mean, I don't know, some of this stuff, if you don't want to answer it and you're just like, why are you asking this question? Just say pass. So is the sky falling? Like, does the data and the patterns that you see on a regular basis, because you watch it more than anybody else, is it pointing to cataclysms? Is it pointing to a rough ride, but then everything gets smooth? Or is it pointing to business as usual? This is completely normal, and these are just patterns that the Earth goes through.
It could be. I mean, there's always a possibility that all of a sudden, boom, something goes off. Whether it's the sun or something with the Earth, a supervolcano, an asteroid hits, that's always possible. But there's no indication that I can tell of leading that direction. It seems that it's more just business as usual. I mean, if we were to go back, I think we have amnesia and we sometimes forget about the past. Now, I didn't live back in like the 60s or 70s, but we can look at, for example, the societal unrest, the different wars that we had, the economy, like we had stagflation, we had inflation over 10%, we had interest rates like way over 10%, right? People were lining up for hours to get gas, right? So now it's like the economy is like the worst and it's about to explode. It's like, listen, back then it was a lot more dire, okay? We did not have energy independence. We were reliant on the Middle East. They were cutting us off and things were bad. But you know, we got through it, right? We kept moving on. I'm not discounting all the stuff in the background and the shadow and all that stuff, but you know, we moved forward. And so I think there's always going to be a group that thinks the world's going to end now, and it's like apocalypse now or apocalypse tomorrow, and it's not going to run around. But at some point there will be the asteroid that comes in and hits us. So
I mean, this is so many groups right now. There's so many groups, I think, that are thinking. I mean, think about the Blue Kachina with the Hopi. Like, they've been talking about that.
Yeah, they're just pounding that drum.
The New Age, talking about the New Earth. I mean, the Christians, oh my God, rapture. Like, I think a good portion of the people who follow solar weather are waiting for that big solar flash. Like,
yeah, that is, yeah, definitely. And what my kind of experience is, I'm just now kind of starting to see this, but there is a bit of a, you know, we're social creatures and there's like different pecking orders and hierarchy and power structures. And so, I mean, to keep it really simple to start, if I was to all of a sudden come out and say, solar flash 2025, it's happening, certainly a large percentage of my audience would then start to believe that because I'm an authority to them, right? And so I was on a podcast recently and this person has a whole bunch of ideas. A lot of them I don't ascribe to, but I'm fine sitting across from people with different ideas. But you could feel a little bit of that, like, well, maybe you should agree so you can get along better with them, right? Or like you can just start to agree a little bit to make things a little smoother, so there's less conflict, right? It's like, listen up, I don't believe in a mud flood, okay? There is no mud flood. And the reason why there's no mud flood is very simple, is because if there was a mud flood, then we could see that seismically. I collected all this data for years with my last job. We built seismographs. We built the actual devices to be able to measure the sound waves, and then you can create the geologic layers and understand the properties. I did a survey in my hometown. I did 100 surveys across my hometown to understand the geologic properties of the top like 30 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters. There are very distinct properties when you go from clay to soil to sand to hard rock, different types of hard rock, right? Whether it's like serpentine or basalt or granite, whatever. If there was a massive mud flood and the entire earth and all this ancient civilization got covered under like hundreds of meters of mud, well, the land surface would all have that distinctive signature, right? It would all be that mud sedimentary signature. That's not what we see. We see that there are plenty of places that have some normal geologic sediment that are in basins, and then there's lots of places that are on hills and on mountains, and we don't see this massive layer of mud.
Now, wait, what are we referring to? Are we talking about the actual flood? Are you saying that the flood didn't happen?
No, it's like a Tartarian mud flood myth.
Oh, okay,
yes,
I've heard that. Okay, yeah, but not really. I haven't jumped into that at all. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a little wild, but it's like very clearly disproven because we have these people, we have the equipment, and we have tens of thousands of people around the world using it, and we're not seeing that signature. And that's the other thing. Some of these ideas, they completely gaslight the hard work of thousands and thousands and thousands of people, their life work, their pursuit for truth, and then someone just says something and it's all now discounted, right? Like there's so many people who have put work into various things, like for example, in this instance, seismology, and then someone comes around and makes up this mud flood myth, and because they have a bit of authority and people want some sort of like, they want some mystery in their life, right? So the past had more mystery to it. Now you've basically said that all those hardworking people are in some inclusion in our liars or something. And it's like, no, like in general, the majority of people are good people. You're the one that's deceiving people. And there's a whole bunch of instances of that. One of them is like this like pole shift narrative, more like pole flip narrative. Another one's this whole like solar flash. Those things are possible. Pole flip, definitely possible. It's happened before. Solar flash, that's just a term. What does that mean? It means a super flare, some sort of large super flare. Is that possible? Yeah, it's possible. Is it going to happen?
Hasn't it happened? Because like I did search, like I really want to know about that. That's really important to me. I think people really want to know about it. And I on the Washington Post, it said something about 14,000 years, like 14,300 years ago, that there was something similar. And there's
big spike in beryllium.
Yeah, and people are saying it's every 25,900. Like that's the, I don't want to say woo-woo, but that's the, the story. But the scientists are saying at least for sure that there's proof 14,300 years ago there might have been something like this. So I mean, it's not out of the. It is possible, like that at least, right? Yeah. And
no, it's possible.
And how much notice will we have? I mean, if something that massive, like if you're like looking at the Earth and you see like a coronal hole as big as your head,
Yeah.
Like how long before we can start freaking out and praying?
I think we'll have I think there'll be some pretty big signs early on, right? We'll see that the sun itself is quite a bit more unstable in some characteristic, right? Like a solar cycle that's much stronger than the last one, like way stronger, like crazy strong. But then also with something like a super flare, you're going to see a huge, huge sunspot. But perhaps here's something that people don't think about, right? Like we have to talk about evidence. 14,000 years ago, we see this spike in beryllium, which is in carbon isotopes and stuff, as a result of basically some sort of like cosmogenic radiation influence. Was it the sun? Was it something from the cosmos? That can kind of be determined by how they analyze the isotopes and which ones went up, which ones didn't. But in general, we just know that there was some pulse of energy that came in. And so it's like, what caused that? Was it some super flare? Possibly. Was it some cosmic event, like a supernova beam that was kind of close to the Earth? That's possible. But sometimes like the evidence isn't going to leave itself. So for example, like we saw Shoemaker-Levy impact into Jupiter not that long ago in our recent history, right? Comet flew into Jupiter. We saw how that affected Jupiter, had a big storm there. What if some like protoplanet like swung into the sun, right? And all of a sudden like blasted into the sun? I would imagine that would destabilize things quite a bit. Like maybe that is the trigger for something like that to occur, because you now have a big physical thing like Mercury, blasting into the sun, destabilizing. Maybe that's what launches the flare. But are you ever going to find evidence of that? I don't know. I think the sun is probably just going to completely consume it and engulf it and just obliterate it, So like 14,000 years later, we're not going to see the scar that on the sun. It's going to regenerate itself. And so we may never know like what caused that. Like who knows? But there's crazy things that happen in our solar system, on our Earth, all this stuff, but it happens typically over geologic timescales, galactic timescales. But sometimes those converge with the human time scale and we see it and it's not good for us. Yeah.
But I love that you mentioned that, because I actually saw that during that podcast that people were kind of like, kind of say what we want to hear. And I'm glad that you didn't, give into that. It just shows that you have, that you have integrity.
Yeah.
And I also like that you're saying that this is the beauty of you. Like, this is why people like you. It's because you are that scientific mind where you're not going to just take anything, any oil, snake oil that someone is giving you. But at the same time, you're open. Like, whereas other scientists and, in the science world, just like the medical world, is very elitist and very, I'm sure and I even sometimes wonder, I'm like, is he still in that world? Have you gone rogue? Like, where do you stand now? Because they generally, as soon as you start talking about these things, they kind of start closing doors. And so I do wonder, are you still managing to stay in that world, or have you just said the hell with you guys?
I think so. I mean, when I went to Hungary to this geophysical observatory, I was treated very nicely by the by one of the geophysicists there, Joseph Bohr, who manages the Schumann resonances observations and does that research, among other things. He released a great paper, I think in 2023, showing the impact of Hunga Tonga, that huge volcanic explosion that occurred in 2022, on the Schumann resonances on the global electric circuit. And so there are a lot of people that study this stuff that know there's other stuff in front of them that we don't know. But there's also, with science, we don't want to go too far and start to then say things that we don't have evidence for. And so I'm willing to go a few steps beyond, I think, most scientists, because I think I just have fun with it. And I'm not beholden to anyone, right? I'm not beholden to this person's funding or that organization or my boss, this, that, whatever. I'm a free agent. So I can go and explore these things and then just say, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? If I made a mistake, I can say, guys, I made a mistake. I have no problem doing that. It's not like my ego, when you raise your hand and ask a question, you learn something. You don't show yourself to be stupid. You show that you're smart and want to learn something. And so I have no problem admitting mistakes. A lot of people can't, so that's why they don't do that. And then, so I was treated nicely by him. I'm right now talking just barely a little bit with Tamitha Skov, who's the space weather woman who does her own solar forecast. I mean, I can't imagine she hasn't seen some of my videos and knows that they're kind of far out there for her world, right? But if she's seen some of my solar forecasts, she also knows that I'm pretty spot on the money. I'm good with it. I'm spot on with being scientific about it, but then I also go those extra couple steps. And so I think there is some cognitive dissonance at times where it's like, well, he did that great, but should I throw out everything because he referenced astrology? And I don't believe in that, right? And that's where that's a skill you need to learn, to disassociate from your preconceived notions and your behaviors that will cause you to judge someone. And something we're all getting better at. But I'm not really so much in the science field now, but I think I will be more in the future as I build out these Schumann stations and everything. And it should be fine. But I think it's really just how you connect to people, just being a good person. And I hope that does well. So.
Yes. And I love that. So I have these two that are called genie in the bottle. So I kind of just want to give you if you could magically say the word and fix one major problem on Earth, what would it be?
If I had a genie that could grant me one wish, I would wish for the eradication of mosquitoes. Absolutely. That's always been top of mind since I was a kid. Those suckers would be gone. That would save millions of lives every single year, and I'm pretty sure all the animals would survive and they would just eat other little bugs and it'd be fine. I think we'd be fine. I don't think there'd be any big fallout from that. I mean, the only thing maybe is they spread these diseases and maybe there's some greater good effect you could say from that. But yeah, they would be gone. I would dead.
Yeah. And I have a very weird frequency fly story that I'll tell some other time, but it's freaky. But anyway. All right, Mercury retrograde. How did I almost forget that? This is so important. I need to know. I need your help. So I would love to know, why is it destroying my life? Why is Mercury, does he hate me? Did I do something? And then why are some people more sensitive? And then one other just thing that I happened to research, it said the mercurial FTEs, right? That they are proportionally much larger, stronger, and more frequent than those on Earth. Do you feel is that somehow correlated to the power of Mercury and its
FTE?
Effect? Yeah, flux transfer events.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is a scientific or an astrological term, but what's your sign,
Scientific. My sign?
Yeah. What are you?
I'm a Gemini.
Okay, so you're ruled by Mercury.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. And right now for you have Jupiter and you have Mars there as well. That's the thing. So we have Mercury retrograde, but he's going through Virgo and Leo, but you are Mercury native, but right now you have Jupiter and Mars just bringing kind of a lot of energy and kind of chaos in general to Gemini. So that's why he's going retrograde. He's like, girl, I need to get everything here buttoned up and cleaned up because those two are causing havoc with all my Gemini friends and that's too wild for me. I'm a Virgo and I've been basically fine.
Oh
But,
my
I'm,
God.
as an earth sign, I'm more grounded. As an air sign, you're a little bit more kind of up in
I
the
am
fields.
completely, never grounded, like never. Like, I mean, watching your channel has helped me to start thinking, okay, should I be grounding right now? I mean, I still don't do it, but I was like, should I?
Hmm.
Okay, so that you answered the question. See, right there, I didn't know that. Caves, like, do you go gyms? Like, I love spelunking. I love caves.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm crazy about it. Um, do you do that? Like, or is that something that you think you might do? Because I would love to see you do that.
Yeah. No, I haven't gone spelunking in a while, but I do like to go into caves. They have a very interesting energy.
Mm,
We did a whole bunch of cave stuff for Secrets of the Underground, which is a TV show that was on for Science Channel back in 2017, because
oh,
it's
cool.
Secrets of the Underground. So you're going to be in a lot of caves and underground
Mhm.
places. And that kind of kickstarted that whole, like, not fascination, but just, I'm comfortable there. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable in a cave system. Um, and then I also went spelunking when I was in Budapest. They have some crazy caves there. Also, when I was in Kyiv, Ukraine, they have like these urban tunnels and caves. And so I've done little cave expeditions during my travels that were fun.
Mm,
And in general, yeah, I mean, I often, like when I was in Germany last, I was searching for caves near me to do a little day trip to go to a cave, but it was a little too far away. The bus lines didn't really work out. But that's something I enjoy doing. It's fun. But
mm.
it's not for everyone because it takes you into those deeper earth energies. And so it can kind of bring up some of those aspects of claustrophobia and shadow and
Um,
stuff. But I think it's very empowering. I think it's good to connect to that source energy, get away from all the noise,
yeah.
right? So I like
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
More in the future, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, look, if you don't do it, I am. So,
Great.
um, okay, let's see. Oh, okay. Now this is possibly a silly one. Okay. So I had a NDEer named Aaron Green. He's like, I don't want to say famous, but he's a big name NDEer, right? Because he has
Hmm.
these extreme pre-birth experiences where he remembers picking every part of his life, every nuance, everything. And he mentions, like, funnily, that he wanted the best looking body and decided against it when they said like how much, like, he might have too much trouble not taking advantage of having a nice looking body.
Hmm.
And so I was thinking, okay, so you chose a nice looking body, clearly,
Oh.
as a soul. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like it has helped or hampered you in your pursuit of like your mission, I guess, in regards to what you do now?
um, well, in general, I think it's just good to be healthy. I mean, healthy is not necessarily attractiveness. They are very similar. Like if you're healthy, you have more of a glow and everything. But yeah, I mean, certain like facial features are different.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's helped in that in general, people are just, I mean, I can't really say I've been like horrendously ugly or anything before, but so I don't really know. But I'd say in general, people are just nicer and more willing to help you. But it's not like it doesn't come with a lot of shadow too, because it triggers a lot in a lot of people. So it's not this divine blessed space for everyone. It's its own thing because it brings up a lot of ego too. It can for yourself or for others.
Mm-hmm.
If you become too attached with it yourself, then like you want to hold on to it. I'm still young, but you'd want to hold on to it and people get all these surgeries and everything. And like Zac
Yeah.
Efron, like he's a good looking chap, maybe not the tallest, but he's a good looking chap. But he's like jaw surgery and like
Yeah.
thickening, like all this stuff. It's like, bro, you already had like the good face and now you're making it like weird.
Mm-hmm.
But there's clearly some dysregulation there of how he views himself. That's just one example. I mean, tons of people. And so, I mean, I really don't think about it too much, to be honest. I just want to make sure my skin's clear. I try to keep my hair clean, though I also like to go swimming in the ocean and stuff. Uh, brush my teeth, shave.
Basic.
Just I don't really focus on it too much because I only see myself when I'm looking in the mirror, right? It's not
Yeah.
like I'm seeing my face. Like there's probably people that watch my YouTube content enough that they see my face more often than I do because I'm not in
Good
front of a
point.
mirror. Yeah,
Good
I'm not in
point.
front of a mirror for probably more than 5 minutes a day.
Mm,
Or like I watch my videos to make sure they're good. So I guess I'm seeing myself there, but it's not high quality, and like in general, I'm just not seeing it that much. But other people are seeing much more, and so they think about it more. And I just in general just want to be like a good person and to treat others right. And it's nice when people treat you well too. And maybe it's because they're just happy there's like some manifestation of beauty in their life. But often it's very triggering to people, and so you get that at times too.
yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I guess
Um,
I don't know why I chose it. If I chose it,
oh, you don't completely believe that we choose all this? You know,
well, I mean, I
I
don't
hear it so
know.
often. That's why I kind of, yeah. All right, ascension symptoms versus what people are experiencing from the solar activity. Would you say that they're the same? Like, are those kind of the same thing?
No, there's a lot of overlap, but there's also a lot of confusion between them. I mean, first off, we have all the stuff that happened with C-19, not only the virus, but also all the jabs and injections and boosters and everything. Those, if you research into the actual cellular mechanistics, have really profound health effects. So, and there's long effects from that too. So that's a big one. Then there's things like Kundalini awakenings, where you do start to align your chakras and you have this flow of energy go through them that's heightened. And you're not used to that surge of energy because you've been like blocked off and stuff. That can be really intense. That exists. And then you have people that are just gaslighting themselves because they're eating crap food and not treating themselves well, and they're blaming it on like a Kundalini awakening or something. But meanwhile, their spirituality is watching like 8 hours of channeled videos every day. Like that's not doing the work. That's just consuming content. And then there is actual geophysical, biophysical connections and health effects from things like solar flares, geomagnetic storms, things of that nature. All those are overlapped and mixed together. And then you have your genetic dispositions, right? You have, like when I moved into this apartment, they had just put in new vinyl flooring. So it was off-gassing all these volatiles. It was awful. And so I very quickly, I bought some shellac, which is like a natural sealant, and I shellacked the entire apartment. So I was on my hands and knees for like the entire day, breathing in not only the
Oh
volatiles
my
from the
goodness.
shellac, but also from the vinyl flooring. So I had a crazy headache the next few days. That
Mm,
wasn't some ascension symptom. That's because I was breathing in chemicals, you know?
yeah.
And so there's things like that. If I hadn't sealed that, that can create like low-grade headaches and fatigue and chronic health problems. And so I took that kind of one-day hit, so I didn't have the long-term problem. But some people don't know this. They have the vinyl flooring that's new, that's off-gassing because it's cheap from China, and their headache is actually not an ascension symptom or Kundalini awakening or solar flare. It's just cheap vinyl flooring that they put in, as an
Mm,
example. There's so many things that influence it, and so we can't pinpoint any single one unless we are really diligent on tracking everything. And gut health's in line. You're eating like your exercise, and you're making sure you have like you're walking and things of this nature. Just all the things are covered, and then when something deregulates or changes, you can look at your hand and be like, oh, I'm dehydrated. That's why. But
mhm.
I think in general, God love them. I think in general, though, most people don't have that level of precision. And so it's just difficult to separate the signal from the noise.
Yeah. Okay. The importance of love. Like I said, I follow a lot of NDEs, and like it gets to the point where it's almost like this is all everybody talks about is love. Like it really gets like, okay, what else? Love, 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 love.
Hmm.
And it's kind of made me stop and think, okay, I definitely need to be more loving if this is what we're here for. If our only reason to be on this planet is to be more, unconditionally loving, then we all have work to do, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I'm just curious from your vantage point, do you feel like there's truth to that? Do you think that love is the key?
Yeah, I mean, love is super important. I mean, it's also caused a lot of suffering, right? There's like both aspects to love that maybe don't call it true love, but there's different expressions of love, and it's caused a lot of great things and pleasure and happiness and connection with others. And it's also caused a lot of problems and suffering, and maybe not problems, but personal growth if you then look into that. I mean, it's like, how do you encapsulate this? How do you even put this into words?
Let's focus on unconditional love. I think when you're talking about love, you're thinking about relationship love, which we kind of just effed up here. Like it's not what it is.
Yeah.
So I mean, like unconditional love, like divine love, maybe we should say. So that higher, what is it, agape? That's what I'm maybe talking about, not the love that we play around with here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first, well, I mean, there's like having the experience of that. And then the reason I mentioned the other stuff is because, I mean, there's so many ways to the same thing, but I think for a lot of people, you move through like the conditional love and evolve through it into the unconditional love. And so I've been having a little bit of a conversation with someone recently, and they said that, they want unconditional love that has no ego. And then if ego creeps into the conversation, all of a sudden they like want to cut off contact, right? Well, if they want unconditional egoless love, and so they have to embody that frequency themselves. Well, if that person then does show some ego, that doesn't mean that they cut off contact, because, unconditional egoless love would be fine with that too. And so it's this kind of, it's like being fine with all outcomes and just accepting it for what it is, and what it is perfect. And that's much easier said than integrated and actually not only like experienced and accepted, but actually like enjoyed, right? And so this goes way back, super deep programming, and I can't say I'm past this or anything, but I do see how I've evolved in this over the past few years, specifically, and yeah, I think it's really important. But I think it goes beyond also just like relationships, for example, like loving your pets, right? We can extend it to pets, but also just like loving where you are, loving your period of life, loving the things that you have and telling them, loving yourself. Like I often will speak to my heart and say, thank you, heart. Like, I love you. You're beating all the time. Like that, this is now getting into the greater expression of love, right? And we're taking it away just from ourselves and one another, but to just in general, just the love of life and this gift of experience. And so when you broaden it out in that way, I think it becomes easier. But I think it gets complicated. It can get complicated. For most people, it's complicated when another person comes into the equation, or multiple people, because then, we have all these really deep, millions of years old programming that is for our survival and for our benefit, but it can be stressful and painful and hurtful to us when things don't happen a certain way, or someone betrays you. If someone's just like, quite simply, if someone betrays you, that's hurtful. And so like if you're in unconditional love, like you can unconditionally love them, doesn't mean that you have to still like pander them, be their like best friend, support them 100%. Maybe you're unconditionally loving them from over here, right? And so there's a level of like, I feel like with unconditional love, I feel like there's a level of detachment for everything in general, which requires you to, in some ways, detach from more close personal contact, because then you are more liable to connect unconditionally. But I'm no expert, so.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, I just wanted to add that because it seems like, again, everything I read, it goes right back to that. And, when Jesus comes up a lot, the idea or the character of Jesus, who is like, love your enemy, love your neighbor, love everybody. And like for a lot of people, it's just the balance. Like, how do I not be a doormat and at the same time just accept everything and everyone, So I think we still have a lot to learn, all of us. All right, so if you could,
And it's also just like, I think a lot of it, maybe what's required for unconditional love is also higher consciousness, because with higher consciousness, you see all the possibilities. And so let's say someone does something that like hurts you, but then you see the opportunity with it with higher consciousness, because they actually expose something in you that before was hidden and now is revealed, because they hit some pain point, some wound. And so you're now grateful for it. And as a result, you're now no longer triggered or mad, because it's actually like, great, this is something that I needed. And if they didn't hit a pain point, then they didn't hit a pain point, right? So it's really consciousness. When someone hits a pain point and you're not conscious of it, then things don't go well. But if someone hits a pain point, trigger point, whatever, but you're conscious of it, then you can see, it's not even a silver lining. You can just actually see the opportunity for what that is. And there's no real hurt. I've experienced it at times. There's no real hurt because like, oh, that was great. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Maybe I'm fortunate that this didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but clearly there's a higher path laid out for me. And so that's great. I'll continue walking that. I know God is supporting me, guiding me. I have faith and things will manifest as they're meant to with divine timing. So.
Yeah. I'm glad you added that because I feel like it is kind of like you have to have a bird's eye view. So that to me is consciousness. Like consciousness is rising above and getting above the physical. It's when you're deep in the physical, when everything is about the looks and the house and what you want from this person. Because again, most relationships is about what is this person going to bring to me? It's not what can I give to this person. It's just our natural state.
Yeah, transactional.
Yes, very transactional. So I think that once you get to the higher level and you're seeing it all as we are these souls in these avatars, just learning and playing this game and experiencing and et cetera, then there's no hurt in anything. Like you said, everything is a teaching moment, and the more hurt they give you, not to say that you stay with them, like you say, detachment is necessary, but you're like, oh, wow, I would never have learned that if you didn't do that to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it at that. So yeah, just tell people how to reach out to you, and then if you want to leave with some kind of message for everybody, and then we'll end it at that.
If you want to explore more of what I do and the videos I produce, and I do things like I make tea blends, all organic, herbal, natural, and I have an ebook, I have a course on astrology and planetary resonances. You can go to not only my YouTube channel, which is at Stefan Burns, STEFANBURNS, but you can also go to my website, which is www.wildfreeorganic.com. And I'm building this all out with time. So hope to see you join the community. It's really just an open place for everyone, unless you're just really a mean, hateful person. I mean, it's open for them too, but at some point it's like, come on. So,
I totally know, like, and I feel like I stopped a few of them that were kind of attacking you. I'm like, what is up with these people? But it is what it is. Like you said, it's just people, and some things are triggering to people. But it's unconditional love, right? Like they're just not there. They wouldn't be making those comments if they were at a higher level. They need work, and we got to be patient.
Yeah, we all got our things to do, and so. I guess my take home message in general, I'm relatively newcomer to this space. I'm not 5 years old, but at the same time, not 70 years old. I think we all come with different kind of experiences and such, but I see a lot of this spiritual community actually having fallen prey to deception, and they don't really know it, or it's been like a slow process. And they've been led to believe things, and it's actually not the spiritual community, but they call themselves that, right? That is in itself a deception, right? Saying this is the spiritual community, but no, it's actually a doomsday cult, things of that nature. They are different. There's some connection, but there's also a pretty big divide. So in general, I would just say, I think we're all going to make it. I think everyone has their path that's laid out, and we just keep walking along it. Follow your gut, your intuition. Listen to signs from God and universe, and take those synchronicities and roll with them. And there's no single one expert who's right on anything. And so I just see a lot of people that are really fearful of certain things that there's no evidence that are going to occur. And I make videos on topics that sometimes can be a little charged. Like I just made a video on magnetic North Pole moving over a supervolcano, which is like, that's kind of a crazy thing. But that's just the reality. Like we know it's moving over the supervolcano. What does that mean? We don't know, but let's explore it. We don't have to talk about fearfully. I didn't make any proclamation of what's going to happen. So there are things in life that are scary. There are other things in life that are blissful. It's good to like expose ourselves to all of them so we are aware of them, and see the bigger picture that everything will be fine. Everything will work out. That's what I believe, and that's my take home.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay,
But I do
cool.
thank you, Stefan, for your time because I mean, this was big. You saying yes to me when I'm such a small, entire, really small channel just shows how beautiful a person you are, and how authentic you are. So I do want to thank you for your time and for your knowledge, and blessings to you, brother.
Yeah, blessings to you,
You're so
Haji,
much,
and
Stefan. I'm telling you, you are everything. You are everything. Like when you, you're everything. I adore you. I truly do. And I'll leave it at that.
thank
All
you,
right.
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.